today, the first quiz. I will try to help you out in sense that we will have more number of quizzes so that you can have the best one to be considered. Right now, I thought I would not make it as tough as I had told you guys, but we'll keep it simple. I will not give you three questions, but I'll give you one single question. As I said, it is open book, open note. You can refer to nothing. I will stick to my words. You can refer to Google. You can refer to the books. You do whatever you have to. Call up friends and speak. I have no issues. But the time limit of the quiz, I had said 7 minutes. Since this is the first quiz, we will have a 10-minute quiz. But exactly at the end of the 10th minute, I will not receive any more answer papers to come through. Right. So CRs, can we have students to submit it on the drive? Has it, or would they send it to me individually?
So if we will make a Google form, that will be better. Like if we make a form and put it, then they will be submitting, and that will be an easy option, I guess.
But right now it becomes difficult, na, Aishwarya? So if we make a Google form, how will you submit it on the Google form? You're going to scan it and send, na?
Yes, sir.
MCQs nahi hai.
Yes, sir. Scan it and send only. Because if we have to send, like if they will send us and we will send it to you, we'll be making a drive link. In that case, also they have to scan only.
So let's do one thing. I think that becomes pretty complicated, guys. You send it to me on my email directly. Right? Okay. But again, as I said, for the class, if I say stop, so when 10 minutes are over, I will tell you to stop. So essentially boils down to the same. आपको scanning करने के लिए भी कुछ time लगता है, तो आप 7 + 3 कर लो. But exactly at the 10th minute when I say stop is where I will, anything after that which comes to my mailbox, I will not accept. Works good? All of you?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Fair enough. So what we will look at today, as I said, I'll give you a 1 hour notice. So I will not take the quiz right away. You have 1 hour with you. Before the class ends, we'll have the quiz. Now, what we'll look at today is basically global markets. And we've talked about rural markets. We've talked about the services sector. We've talked about branding. We'll talk about global markets before going into typical competitive strategies that are adopted by companies on a national level and then on a global level. From there, we move on to a bit of digital marketing. And from that, we will look at the new trends in marketing. That's how the session plan typically will look like as far as the classes are concerned. So when we talk about global markets, let me ask the first question to all of you. When we say global markets, what are we referring to? CRs, your class participation stuff is something where you can pick up from right now. So the first question is, when we say global markets, what are we referring to?
So big MNCs companies that are mostly in the major countries or many parts of the world. So they have a huge share in the market.
So I would, but don't tell me they're MNCs. So when I say global market, so you're talking about a market share in other countries. So that's what Aditya has talked about. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, sir. So to me, global market is something where the company doesn't stick to any particular country. It moves around several countries. So there are several markets for the company in different countries, sir.
So all possible customers across the globe.
Okay. Now, while I accept your points, now tell me, why would a country look at a global market? So why would a company look at a global market? For example, let's say an Indian company, why would it want to go global?
Sir, to increase the reach.
Yes, sir. To get more reach, to expand its product and gain more customers.
The economies of scale, sir.
Yes, sir. Also the labor cost also the factor also. So they can also go to the abroad or other country to make a profit. So this is also.
So every country is not rich with all the resources. They need some resources from other country also. So there's global market for that.
So are you trying to say, Sharda, that the reason why I look at a global market again is because of better natural resources, better raw materials, better source of somebody talked about labor cost. So so out and out what Abhik talked about, to achieve economies of scale. So economies of scale accepted, one point. Increasing market share and reach, another point. What else?
Increase the profit margin.
Increase the profit margin. Can you elaborate? You're correct. That's a very good point, Siddhant.
Sir, if we are we will be exporting it to different countries, and the things that are costing here, people are looking for cheaper products, like the profit. Companies usually sell the products in large volume, just to increase the profit margin, increase the profit. But in other countries, when they export, the prices are little bit on a higher side, and they can that margin of profit is more. They
Okay.
can
So
give
so
this
you're
export thing. Yeah.
okay. Good. So Siddhant, what you're basically trying to say is when I'm looking at increasing my profit margins, I can leverage on ये इतना बच्चे भी कहाँ आ गए तो लोग सब अब भेज दियो क्या SMS अरे क्विज ले रहा है साला ये आज करके तो lot many people are there in the waiting room. I'm not, so this is the last one I've admitted here. Please tell the others I'm not admitting any more right now because we already are more than 10 minutes into the scheduled time. So what Siddhant is trying to say is economies of scale could be one, but I can have better profit margins if I have higher margins that I can get in other countries, which can offset maybe lesser margins that I'm getting in the country of origin. So understand, one is the country of origin from where the company has evolved or where it has started. For example, a French company entering into global markets, or maybe a South American country looking at global markets, or an Indian company looking at global markets. So obviously the dynamics are going to be very, very different, right? Yep.
Yes, sir. Competitive advantage over other companies.
Very good. So Sunit, elaborate on that. That's a very good point.
So, for example, Adidas can expand its market on Asia, where Nike is not so dominant, and unlike in America and Europe.
So to your point, Sunit, can I say that there are certain global brands which do not need any kind of a product adaptation. They are known the world across, so they can sell the same standardized products across to different countries.
Yes, sir.
Right?
Yes, sir.
Whereas in some cases, some product adaptations needs to be made, some product modifications needs to be made to suit the local consumer preferences. The consumer preferences will change from country to country.
Yes, sir.
Right? If you look at typically, for example, not so much right now, but then initially, foreign cars, when they used to come into the Indian market, the aerodynamic design was different. The aerodynamic design in those foreign countries was very different from what it was for the Indian roads. Right? Okay, go ahead. Next.
Sir, to establish a popular and well-recognized brand and image of the company, we can use the global markets.
Can you explain that, Aliva? That's a good point.
Yes, sir. Sir, if any brand is if the people of the native country are using any brand, then the other people, if we will expand it to global markets, then the other foreigners or other people will get attracted to that product by seeing its brand if it is in outside country.
Okay. Next.
Sir, overcoming time constraints. Like unlike traditional marketing, in global marketing, we like faster implementation of those marketing campaigns, like which means will generate faster profits.
But why do you feel, Piyush, that the lead time in foreign countries is much lesser? It can be higher also. You might have a lot of red tapeism. I hope you understand what red tapeism means. Certain governments might have certain norms where it becomes very difficult for them to operate. So in that case, how do we? I'm just trying to understand from you, Piyush. Your point is good, but I'm just trying to say, what leads you to think that it will be easy to implement, or the ease of adaptation in a foreign country is going to be much better, or in a global market, than the country of origin?
Sir, because it gives you like a greater reach.
So it happens in what cases? I'm just trying to put you into that place. So this will happen with, in certain cases hota hai na, so what is it where this can happen? Not with all brands, no? But in some brands it can. So what are those brands, or what is that, what is that quality of the brand that we are talking about where this is possible? Think. You give me an answer, Piyush, on this. Let me help you with this. If your brand equity is very strong, Piyush, and the brand pull is more on the brand strength, and the product. For example, somebody talked about Adidas and Nike. Let me take the example of Adidas and Nike again. Adidas, Nike, off late, I think even in a place like Bhubaneswar, you have a body shop available. CR, there are many people who are trying to enter the waiting room. Please tell them I'm not allowing to. I know why this is coming from. Right. So when you talk about this big brands today, the awareness level of the brands is pretty high, because call it social media, call it digital marketing, the awareness levels is pretty high, and the interest levels are also pretty high for the customers. So today, why would a body shop look at operating in India big time, and they're selling big time also? Why would you think that people would prefer an Adidas or a Nike today? Even you as a younger generation, if you are given an option between a Adidas and a Nike and any other sportswear which is maybe local, your first preference obviously would be an Adidas or a Nike. Nike, why? Because you feel this is a strong brand, hence quality must be good. Normal consumer perception. So what Puneet, or I forget the name. I'm sorry, I'm very bad at remembering names. I think Piyush, what Piyush had said, this can happen. The ease of operation of product adaptation will happen when your brand equity is very strong in a global market. People are already aware about your product. The interest level and the desire to buy is already there. The next level is the action, for which we have to look at the marketing mix. So what should be my product mix? What should be my pricing mix? What should be my promotional mix? Is something that the marketer then needs to look at. Yep. Go ahead. Next. I think.
Sir, increase in the goodwill of the company or the brand value in the market, the brand recognition will increase.
So when you enter into global markets, so one is, there are two strategies that you can do. One, you leverage on the goodwill that you have generated based on the brand equity that you have and enter into the global markets. Two, you feel that this is a market which is not tapped. It's a big market for you, and customers will prefer it. So that is where you can definitely look at increasing your brand strength, increasing your brand value in the global markets.
Can I ask you one, like if the increase the brand value, that it will be easy to fundraise in foreign country, like
It will be, come again, Ashish. It will be easy to
fundraise, right? Fundraising for company.
see. Raising funds for the company again is, we are not talking about typically startups here. We are talking about a global market. Even a startup can look at a global market also. I'm not denying it. But what we are looking at is, if my brand is strong, right? If my brand is strong, obviously my working capital also should be equally be, sound enough. I should look at what is the funds available for me. What is the strength of my brand in terms of its what is the financial strength of my brand? Based on that, only I will look at entering into that market. But if you're talking about raising funds in a global market, too far-fetched initially. You can raise funds, of course, in the global markets, but if that is what I understand you're trying to say. The other thing that perhaps you're trying to tell me, Ashish, is if the brand has gone global, it will be easy to have a venture capitalist or somebody to pump in funds. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yes, sir.
Are you talking about market capitalization also?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Market capitalization.
Okay.
Sir,
Yep.
accepting diversification into the company and also standing along with new skills and technologies
along with all the other nations. Like if an Indian company is moving to an European country, then it can adapt new skills from their people and also stand
and along with new technologies to innovate and reconstruct its machinery and also the products.
Alternatively speaking, that's a very good point, Arpan. Alternatively speaking, the other way around, if I have a global firm coming and operating operating out here, what happens to the local players? The local players will then also try to adapt to technology. They will also look at standing up the competition, which means there are two things that can happen. One, we have we have better technology coming into the country. Our so one is ease of the product to the customer because he has a product with better technology available to him at a price. I will talk about that when we talk about pricing for global markets also, at a price which is suitable to him. One. Two, with more technology coming in, even the Indian companies here would tend to, will tend to benchmark against that company. So there'll be a scalability with respect to technology, product improvement, right? So it may not necessarily be with technology, but there obviously will be a product improvement, product quality improvement. In terms of pricing also, tomorrow if you have a global player which offers you a branded product at a lesser price, the companies will also in India will also tend to look up to match up that price if they're pricing highly, right? So the
So for
concept, yeah, go ahead.
Yes, sir. For example, the semiconductors industry, the government is welcoming to India. So our people will be benefited, and the labor will be skilled to
They
make
have,
that
they
sort
have,
of.
they have, Arpan. I'm so happy that you talked about the semiconductor industry. By the way, you're an engineer?
No, sir.
Okay. Otherwise, also, as far as semiconductors are concerned, we have been playing, in KIT, we have been playing a big role also in terms of getting the best brains in semiconductor industry together. There was a platform where they had invited, there was a forum where all the semiconductor companies of the world had got together in Bangalore. Now we were the education partners to them. The whole idea was to get the best of best technology discussions happening. And for us, what we wanted to look at is, can we have a tie-up with 3-4 companies where that technology also comes back to our students in our school of electronics here, and we have done that. But good point, Arpan. Good point. Yeah. Next.
Sir, adding up to what Urban said about the skill sets of the people, so another benefit can be through global access, can be a huge, like broader way of talent. Like for an example, we can say Netflix in different countries, in country like Europe, or we can state our country like India. People usually prefer the language of Hindi or Telugu or Tamil. So people over here are more acquainted to this. Like I can speak Hindi more fluently than Europeans. Obviously, this is an obvious thing. So Netflix, for example, set up the base in European expansion, and the company, like this. Mind team members who understand the consumers and culture across different territories of the whole world. So we can say that they have provided the linguistic based in a very broader way. Like this is one of the possibilities and greater benefit of expansion of the global access.
Good, Itishri. What you're trying to talk about is the fact that because of the advent of global brands, communication has improved with time. And this is a very nice point that you said. That's a very nice point that you said. Is it has also helped people understand languages better. I mean, believe me, when you talk about Netflix and the Hotstars and the Amazon Primes, I don't know. I mean, maybe your younger brothers and sisters are more addicted to this Korean movies and Korean stuff, is it? Or you guys also? I don't know. I mean, so I mean, for me, for my generation, I found it very strange when my younger daughter was on, every evening she would be watching a Korean movie. And then when I, asked her why a Korean movie, he says, Papa, you should see this to understand. So what I'm trying to bring in here is, ideally an Indian customer would not have looked at a Korean, a movie or a Korean, anything to do with Korean culture. Perhaps here there is an integration of culture also happening. Something which Harpan talked about, you also spoke about. Good. Next.
Yes, sir. I would talk about a basic point that if there is a huge gap in demand and supply of certain products which I am providing. Suppose we are in India, we are seeing that there is a huge gap in supply in certain products in Bangladesh or any other country like that. So we will be going over there. So it can be, if we see it like that, it gives us a huge opportunity to work on that. In that way,
it's a very valid point, Avik, that you've spoken about. Many of the global brands right? Or maybe if you look at Indian brands also tomorrow. If I look at, he talked about Bangladesh. Let's say the Southeast Asian countries where my cost of labor is even much lesser than what it is in India. Can I look at those markets to produce the material and then package and send it back here? In fact, lot of the big apparel brands that we wear, has the same approach.
Yes, sir. Bangladesh has the largest in that sector. Bangladesh is the largest right now.
Yep. So, so in the apparel sector, whether it is Bangladesh or whether it is Sri Lanka or whether it is any of the Southeast Asian countries. I mean, if you look at even bigger brands like maybe even if you look at an IBM for that matter, and any of you who's worked in IBM also will agree with me, they look at India as a potential hub to service almost about 1/3 of its total market. Reason? Because here not only is it talent, but also the cost is much lesser. So it is easy for them to have a hub in India and look at the Southeast Asian market, or maybe look at a few European markets also. So companies can use certain countries to look at not just product adaptation, but also use it for increasing their bottom line in terms of revenue, in terms of profitability, right? Good. Next.
One more advantage will be that by going to global market, the revenue will be
Simran, can you be a bit louder, better? I can't hear you. Just be a bit louder. Better. Yeah.
So one more advantage will be that if the company is going on a global level and the revenue will be stable, as like if one country is like slowing down, the economic slowing down, that other country may help to like generate more revenue in comparison to that, and it will make a revenue line as stable.
Okay. That's the so Simran, this is the same point that one of your friends had also talked about earlier. So in helping in terms of the profitability of the company. Good. Next.
Sir, what I believe, often companies and brands choose a global market as an opportunity to kickstart their business, as they get cheaper raw materials and they find large manufacturing units and also labor force. So they choose global markets.
Okay.
So it also helps in increasing the product line, like based on different geological regions. Like we have example of lace. In case of different regions, they have different flavors for the particular local area, which influence their product more and reach to the customer and create a good image of the product.
Good, Samita. In fact, that's so. If you look at lace is one part of it. I mean, look at how maybe your pizza market has adapted itself. Whether it's a Pizza Hut or a Domino's, you have the menu which is completely Indian. You'll have a lot of, you never find a tandoor name coming across in any of the globe that you go to. Similarly, if you look at markets like a China, or maybe look at markets like Malaysia, you have different names, same brand, same KFC, but you'll have maybe for example, you're talking about a chicken wing, we call it wing, या क्या बोलते हैं उसको, chicken wing. अरे वो wings का जो आता है ना KFC में, wings बोलते हैं.
Wings.
हाँ. तो I mean you guys are much better at that. Huh?
Bucket chicken.
Butter chicken. KFC
Bucket chicken.
Bucket is, I think, what they introduce is they have rice and they have all that. That's where they introduce bucket.
No, sir.
Quantity. Yeah. In quantity, they have the bucket chicken. So I thought butter chicken. I'm so sorry. You never know. KFC might come up with something on those lines. If they can come up with biryani of late, you might find a butter chicken coming in also pretty soon. If you have a tandoori pizza available, or some name of pizza is available in Domino's and Pizza Hut, so that's adaptation. That's adaptation to the Indian customers and preferences. Yep. Next. Avinash, go ahead. Avinash, you wanted to say something? Go ahead. Avinash Mahapatra.
Yes, sir. I was telling about that KFC movie, sir. That's smoky.
Okay, so KFC is something that has been interesting for all of you guys too. Okay. Now, having said this, what do you think are the typical disadvantages of getting into a global market? What are the disadvantages of getting into a global market? We've about the advantages. What are the disadvantages of entering into a global market?
It requires a larger working capital or funding that many companies may not have available at the particular time, and that's the main issue, sir, I think.
Okay, working
Sir,
capital.
one more issue.
The market risk is also there.
The entry barrier also the
Can we go one by one so that it is easier for even the CR to note also and for me to listen also? Let's go one by one. Yeah.
so the entry barrier is the one of the main reason to difficulty face the company into global market.
Okay. Entry barriers definitely is one of the areas where. So some countries typically have high entry barriers because they want to protect their own industries also. So is it something which is viable for me? Is it that only strong brands can leverage on the brand strength to ensure that entry barriers are not much of a deterrent? But if your brand is, not that very strong and you're entering into a global market and you have entry barriers, so forecasting and understanding one, which is my potential market. For that potential market, I also need to understand the socioeconomic condition of the country or the place where I'm operating. So I need to understand, will these guys be able to afford my product or not? What is the buying capacity of people out there? Will they spend something incremental if my brand, if my product is priced higher? Right. Three, I need to look at the political stability of that particular country. What if it is, the political governments keep on chip. So for example, Pakistan tomorrow, you never know whether an Imran Khan government is going to stay or not. Right. So I need to look at political stability. I need to look at the socioeconomic conditions of the market. I need to understand even the environmental factors also. Entry barriers to uske baad aayega. I need to understand the environmental factors. What if I set up a factory in an area which is prone to earthquake, to cyclones, right? So understanding the environmental condition, the climatic conditions, whether my product is suited for those climatic conditions or not, also becomes important. And fourth, as Ashish said, entry barriers. A government can protectionism. The other word which you hear in the market is protectionism. So protectionism is where certain countries tend to protect some of their industries, some of their segments. India also we have that newsprint. If you look at the newsprint sector, if there is no protectionism there, you will have China coming in and selling at a very low cost in India. So there is certain entry barriers also created. But if I have a global brand with an established presence, so very strong brand equity, where I can forecast my demand, I can ensure that there is going to be a demand for my products. Obviously, I can look at managing the entry barriers also. Yeah, next.
That's why the India is not been signed free trade agreement with China. That's
Rather, if you look at, there is something called as BRICS: Brazil, Brazil, India, China, and South Africa, if I'm not wrong. So if you look at that, it's about, so there are different treaties that the countries have, and they're more comfortable there.
So can we say that it will put a threat to the local brands? And I mean, there will be a lot of competition among the local brands if the global markets enter into their space.
So that is what I was talking about earlier, is that when we're saying competition, we are saying that the local players will also tend to, reinvent themselves because for them, the benchmark is going to be the global firm which has entered India.
Yes.
It could be with respect to product. They might also look at augmenting their product features, coming up with product innovation. It could be to do with price. If the Indian players is charging more, right? It could be to do with the promotional message also. So look at what Bajaj did. I mean, when they saw LML coming into the market, I mean LML Piaggio coming into the market, they focused on the concept Hamara Bajaj, the purely Indian product, Indian company. Right? The same thing when Honda separated, Hero focused on the emotional aspect. They talked about, this is our own product, a product from India. Right? Yep, next.
So can we say that there will be more financial risk? Like, for example, if they're trying to start their business on a global level, so it is a bit risky for them to adapt their languages and culture, due to which their business can fade.
Absolutely, Shivani. If you look at a risk with respect to one, the culture is different. The preference, the buying preferences are different. The buying abilities are different. Fourth and most importantly is you cannot have a standardized product or a standardized price or a standardized promotion across in all countries. It has to be customized, right? Many times, the communication message of a global brand in countries also has to be tweaked, because if you translate that into their local language, it might mean something very, very different, right? So that's something which definitely, so there is an element of risk in on the financial part of it. There is an element of risk in terms of having the right marketing mix also. It's very important to understand what is the marketing mix that I need to have when I'm entering into this particular global market, right?
So with marketing mix also, it is also difficult to determine our target customers.
Yes. So understanding what is going to be my segment. So segmenting, targeting, and positioning also is a tough job. But what I do is I already have identified the segments that I'm looking at. Before I enter into a global market, I would have identified the segments. I would have looked at which is going to be my target market and what is the potential number of customers I'm going to get, right? And then I plan to then when I plan to enter into the global market, I can design my positioning exercise before I enter into the market or even after I enter into the market. But planning across which segment to enter, which markets to enter, we discussed on certain parameters, so also the socioeconomic conditions, there's political stability, entry barriers, all these factors needs to be taken into consideration before we actually take a decision whether to go or not to go, right? Yeah. Next.
Sir, maybe
so-
next time in some of the products, maybe sir, there may be the logistical issues also, sir. Like
Absolutely.
transporting some product into few countries might be very difficult in few other countries.
So I take your point, Abhinash. So I'm saying in such cases, what would you typically do? Supposing you are the global marketing head for a particular brand, and logistics we are finding is an issue that is happening there. So what would you typically do to address this particular issue?
Sir, I would first look up to some neighboring countries with better business policy so that I can set up the plants there and transport that product into here, rather than setting up plants in a country which has hostile logistical conditions, if it is possible.
So Abhinash, to his point, let me tell you, in global markets, there is something called as a proximity factor. What is a proximity factor? Normally, what happens is, if, for example, an Indian brand would typically first look at the neighboring countries of India. It will look at it will look at a Pakistan. It will look at a Nepal. It will look at a Sri Lanka. It will look at maybe a Bangladesh. So once I look at countries which are in close proximity to me, what is the base? The underlying thing is that people in the close proximity, I'm able to, as a marketer, I'm able to know their buying preferences, their buying behavior, their buying capacity, right? Rather than entering into a European market where maybe it's very difficult for me to understand and forecast the market there, because there the purchasing power would be different, the buying behavior would be different, the consumer preferences would be different. So the proximity factor is something that most companies would normally tend to look at as a strategy if they are entering into global markets. But if my brand is already a global brand, my brand equity is very, very strong, then I would look at the market potential. I would look at a market potential saying, Chalo, India is a developing country. So I need to categorize whether I enter into a developing country or I enter into a developed country, right? So if I'm entering into a developing country, my strategy will be different. If I'm entering into a developed country, my strategies will be different with respect to the marketing mix, right? So I will have to make a tweak in terms of my marketing mix in order to understand. So not only that, I will also tend to understand what should be my mode of entry. I will come to that next. Once we are done with the disadvantages, I'll talk about the modes of entry also. Yeah, go ahead.
So collecting capital is a big issue that, like for example, we all have witnessed the largest car theft in the human history, where 1,000 Volvo automobiles were never paid by the North Korea. So collecting capital is a big issue in this particular thing.
Absolutely. Stuck up capital. I think there is somebody's got a mic on, or so Rishabh, are you into some other meeting also simultaneously?
No, sir.
तो कहीं से तो कुछ इको आ रहा था. Anyways, understand. So one is so to add to Rishabh's point, one is so he talked about the fact that it's an opportunity cost lost. I manufacture in that country of origin. My demand becomes erratic for some reason or the other. My products are not able to move. So that's definitely so. It's a case of an opportunity cost lost is one part. That's another disadvantage that can happen also if so that is again related to maybe the political stability or maybe so and it's not that Volvo could not sell those products because of the aerodynamic design or anything of that. It was more to do with the political environment then and thence the purchasing capital. It is like, for example, as a company, if I have looked at targeting Ukraine as a market for me, and I've targeted this 3 months back, and then when all my strategies are in place, I find the Russia attacking Ukraine. So at that point of time, my forecasting goes wrong. It can affect my logistics, it can affect my manufacturing, and it can affect my bottom line also. Okay.
So modifying the product as entering the global market in different countries, different marketplaces, we will need the same product to modify it according to the customer needs. So that would implement many more new clearance and many more patent drives.
Okay.
So
modifying the you're looking at adapting the product to the different markets that you enter into, which also is what we're trying to say is different markets will have different product in terms of product attributes could be different, shape, size, color could also be different. Okay, next.
Sir, when we enter into a new market, there are already established market leaders. So it will be very difficult. For example, Netflix is keeping its price low and not increasing how it is increasing price, and so still has not been able to acquire customers. Also, the consumer behavior is important because Indians do not want to pay for subscription. Therefore, Spotify has also not been able to acquire much customers.
Good example, Sonali. When you talked about Spotify not able to, so Spotify also came up initially where it never charged any subscription in the initial years when it entered into the market. What happens is so the Indian consumer felt that this is something that I'm getting for free. All of a sudden, if Spotify starts saying that you have to pay, then there is a resistance to pay that happens. But then, not with the entire population, you will still have a set of customers who are ready to pay. But your point is well taken that people might not. And in terms of pricing, as she said, Netflix in India still operates at the 399, 499, 199, psychological pricing aspects, which is something that Netflix would have understood. They would have done a proper research in terms of the consumer mindset. They would have understood competition. They would have understood the affordability, right? So when you keep it at 199 or 299 or 399, their target segment typically becomes the youth. The age group that they would normally be targeting would be between, let's say, maybe a 15 to a 25 or maybe a 15 to a 30. And Netflix certainly will not look at targeting people like us because they know for sure that these guys are not going to subscribe to a Netflix, right? So that talks about a lot of research with respect to market, with respect to the market segmentation, with respect to the market targeting, and then I repeat again, and thence the positioning that they are looking at. Good. Next.
Sir, apart from all this, like logistics and entry barrier, can HR policies and labor laws in different countries can also be a factor while expanding globally?
Yes, that's so. So if I talk about labor laws, when you guys come into the third semester, you will have all these electives coming in. So if you talk about the IR aspects in a lot of places, the industrial relation aspects of operating in different countries, definitely yes. You might have a set of workers in particular countries who are resistant to change. You might have workers in certain geographical areas who would have their own way in terms of how they want to look at things, right? Why talk about global markets? I would have seen that, and I've seen that in the factories in paints, and I've seen that in the factories. And so in East, if you go across and tell the labor community or the worker community saying that you have to put in extra hours to finish this job because the job is priority, either you have to pay them overtime, or two, they tell you a flat no, right? if you bring in new technology, the adaptation to technology in India, I'm saying in East, there is a resistance to change. But so when I worked with paints in Jensen Nicholson, when I worked with phenolics in Pune, the shift was very much evident inside India itself. In the West, if production has to be completed over time or not, the mentality is we need to complete. In terms of new technology, I should be able to understand the technology. Can I adapt to technology? Is something that you find in the West, you find it in the South, not so much maybe in the East or in the North. So this diversity, as somebody talked about, one of you talked about diversity, is something that is very much important for the global players when they're entering into the Indian market to understand. So what Yash also said, the HR aspects or the IR aspects of it is also very, very important. The labor laws, the factory laws, the industrial dispute acts that we have here, all these may not be sounding very good to the global players when they're entering into the global market, right? Okay, any more raised hands? I don't see any more raised hands. So my next question is before
Sir,
I
also international expansion may be costly and working capital may be reduced for them.
So that is something, Pratyasha, which we spoke in the beginning of the class, if you remember. I take your point. So understanding the financial risk involved, understanding the working capital that is required, and what kind of a working capital leverage do I have, is something that global players will have to think on before deciding on which market to open or which market to go. And taking a cue from your point, my next question to the class is: what do you think should be typical methods of entering into global markets? Please do not go onto a Google Uncle to find out. I see some people, typing away onto their desktops or laptops. Don't do that. Whatever comes to your mind. Yeah.
The first method can be studying the local market, like what are the needs there, understanding the buying decision behavior of the consumers there in the market that you're going to enter.
So that's okay. Yes. What I'm trying to say is that is something that we have discussed. I'm saying what could be possible methods, right? Do I straight away जाके दूसरे company में अपना factory लगा दूं? Or do I look at having, some, so what are those? Those who have not answered, let's allow them to first answer. Yeah.
We can.
So
Avinash, hold on. Those who have not, CR, please look at those who have not answered. We should, allow them to speak first. Yeah. Yes, Mashweta.
So can we say that we kind of can implement some kind of a collaboration? Like, for example, I'm an Indian company. I want to start in some other country, so I can approach whoever are even if not market leaders, but who are established and who are maybe looking for some kind of collaboration, and we can approach and collaborate.
So joint ventures is something that you're
Joint
talking about.
ventures.
Having a JV, very good.
So franchising, that can also be a better option.
Very good.
As we have seen McDonald's and all of them, they have done franchising here. These are international brands and they have given franchisee to the Indian people to open up their.
Very good, Aditi. So franchising, licensing is, where so the examples that she talked about, McDonald's, KFC's, or maybe the Pizza Huts of the globe. So the licensing or franchising options, very good. So JV, licensing or franchising option. What else?
Yes, sir. Adding to that point, we can say we can do the direct investment in the established company.
So if it's so what Gautami talks about is a direct investment. Yes, if it is already an established brand, I can straight away look at investing directly into a potential market.
So selling online directly in D2C mode.
A D2C mode, yes, that is also something that we can look at. What else? Let's allow people who've not spoken to speak.
Outsourcing.
Outsourcing. Can you that you're correct, Sneha? Can you elaborate on that? You're correct, Sneha. Elaborate on what do you mean by outsourcing?
So basically, outsourcing is like mostly it's done in UAE. You can say the construction company, they're taking cheap labor from China. Like China is doing the China or India's laborers are working over there, where they're outsourcing a lot of Indian employees or like Indian companies on a like time basis, on a like yearly
So,
basis.
so Pratyush, what you said talking about is in terms of labor, right? In
Yeah.
terms of cheap labor available. So that is one part. But what Sneha is it? When Sneha said outsourcing, I think there is another thing that one can look at. So that option is where I will not set up. I'll produce in my country of origin, but I'll have an agent or I'll have people. So there are two options. One, I have an agent who picks up my product from here and sells it in that particular country. He appoints his channels there.
Yes,
Two,
sir.
I have a traveling salesman. Typically, if I look at B2B, if I look at industrial products, if it is manufactured, I manufacture in the country of origin, but I have maybe my traveling salesman who goes across and sells it across. So this is also adopted. Three is if I so here the ownership of the product still remains with me. If it is a traveling salesman, the ownership of the product is with me. If it is agents that I apply, the ownership of product is not necessarily with me as a global manufacturer, right? So this was just to answer those 2 points that you talked about. I think there are some people who are yes, Shreya.
So as we can develop many other promotion strategies such as conducting events, sponsoring events, business events, and leveraging the use of the goodwill we have as a brand in a we have in a respective country. We can come up with various events and sponsoring it so that we can leverage the brand value we have, brand equity we have.
Okay. So you're talking about doing events to create the buzz, doing events to kind of so there you are just increasing the awareness level. You are augmenting the awareness level if the brand is already there, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So
So I
the
have one question.
exchanging thing also, like two parties from two different countries will be like exchanging products. Like I'll be supplying that company things which are not available in that country, and in return they will be supplying what is not available in my country. Like that, we can enter to the market.
Aishwarya, if you're talking about a typical barter system, not always does it work better. Not always does it work, but your point noted. Point noted.
So I have one question. What is the difference between JV and outsourcing?
I will just come to that, Rishabh, but then somebody has to mute. I can hear a lot of background noise. I don't want to, mute everybody, but then please do mute across. Yes. But Rishabh, I'll take your question. Let's just first hear out people who've not answered, because I think I find a couple of names here. Subhajit, I'll take a question, Rishabh. I'll take a question. In fact, your question I'll answer when I show you my slides, right?
Sir, brand acquisition can be a method.
Brand acquisition, very good. Acquisition can be definitely another option that I look at. So there's a brand let's say in another country which is not doing well. They don't have the financial strength, and they're ready to sell off their brand or have they ask a global brand to come and invest. I take up, let's say, 60% of the market share there, which means I have the controlling authority there, so I can acquire. Right? I can look at mergers and acquisitions as a strategy. Good, Subhajit. Others see it's very difficult for me to find out and who's not answered. Those who've not answered, please come forward and answer first, and then we have. Yes,
Sir, we
Chandrika.
can say trade intermediary.
Trade intermediaries, yes, that's what we talked about. Trade intermediaries could be agents, could be people who can, who are typically CNF people, CNF agents also. So they can ship my products, they can store my products. So definitely, Chandrika, good. Who else? Rishabh, I will answer your question when I'm there on the slides. I'll just show you. So can I share this? So can I just share the screen, guys, or anybody else here? Have I missed out anybody? Please tell me.
Just an example.
Yeah.
The recent example, Baiju sponsoring the FIFA World Cup. That is moving into the global market. And also, Baiju said that it will be providing books to the teenage boys and girls, students, and also jerseys and all those FIFA items it will be selling. So it is a good move towards the global market.
Absolutely. So IPL for one is for sure. I think there's some damn problem with PowerPoint on my MacBook. Where the last two classes, so this is the problem that I'm facing. I can't. You're able to see my screen, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
But I'm not able to put it on a slideshow format. So that's anyways. So this is what the book talks about in terms of, and I think why I wanted to at the end of it, why I show the slides is because these are things which already has come from the class. Look at what the definition says. It says a global firm is one that operates in more than one country, captures economies of scale through R&D, production, logistical, marketing, and financial advantages. And repetition that are not available to purely domestic competitors. Everything that the definition talks about is something that the class has already said. Typical strategies, there is something called as a waterfall approach, and the other one is called as a sprinkler approach, right? So when you look at waterfall approach, it is basically going into one after the other market. Yep, somebody said something.
It's a step-by-step process.
I'm sorry, can you be a bit more louder?
It's a step-by-step process.
Step by step. Good. So you read all this in MM1, right? Marketing Management 1, you read this? I can safely put this as a quiz question today. So waterfall approach is going step by step. Yes. So I decide on going into different countries. I take it step by step. I look at the feasibility. I look at the advantages, and I go from one country, establish myself, then look at maybe another country if it works into my favor. The other approach is a sprinkler approach. How many of you would have seen a sprinkler? I'm sure most of you would have. And since you guys are on an online mode, you see a lot of sprinklers here in all our lawns and everything. We use that inside the campus. A sprinkler typically looks at a radial throw of water, right? At one shot, it covers a bigger area, but it's a rate, so it has a radial throw of water into all areas, right? So the sprinkler approach for global firms is where they look at many markets simultaneously. Not always a wise decision when they look at many markets simultaneously, but if again my brand is very strong, my brand equity is very strong, I can definitely look at entering into many markets at the same time. The entire Southeast Asian market, if I feel the preferences and the buying behaviors are the same, the purchasing capacity are the same, I can enter into 2-3 markets also, right? But typically most global firms follow a waterfall approach. They go step by step, one market after the other. So this is something that we spoke about. The major decisions in international marketing is first and foremost is whether to go or not. Why at all should we look at global markets? If I'm happy with the country of origin, I have different methods where I'm reaching out to them through licensing, through indirect distribution. Why at all should I look at the markets? If I've decided to enter into the global markets, which markets to enter? So when I say which markets to enter, it is again the factors that one needs to take into consideration here could be, the risk factors involved, the socioeconomic conditions, the political stability, the cost of production, right? So the buying potential of my potential customers there. The third step that I need to understand is that I need to take a decision is how to enter. Do I go and set up a base, as one of you spoke? Should I look at licensing? Should I look at indirect distribution? Should I have my traveling salesman to go across? And then what is important is understanding the marketing program, the marketing mix that I need to do. Should my product be the same product that I offer in different markets? Is that the product that I'm going to put into this particular market? So understanding product adaptation, understanding product understanding product pricing becomes very important. The promotional message also. How do I promote my product? I might be following a particular approach in one country. Is that the same approach there? Are people so tech savvy with respect to maybe digital marketing in other countries where I operate? So these things needs to be taken into consideration. So different stages of entering into international markets. One, do I look at exporting via independent agents? I think some of you talked about it. I establish sales subsidiaries. Now, sales subsidiaries is where I do not have complete control on them, but these are people who work with me as a global firm. Third is establish production facilities abroad. The first one I missed out, no regular export activity. So as and when there is a demand for my products, these products will be something that there'll be an intent that can come through from the other country and I send my products. Some of the free trade zones, I think between, so this is something that you know, I'm skipping this slide. Developing markets, we talked about it. Now, this is where we're talking about the modes of entry. We talked about indirect exporting. We've talked about direct exporting also. Licensing we spoke about, joint ventures we spoke about, and direct investment we spoke about. But if you look at all these 5 modes of entry, these are basically dependent on certain parameters. Commitment from the customer, commitment from the firm, risk involved, the amount of control. So if I'm looking at licensing, if I'm looking at a joint venture, what is the amount of control that I have as a global firm? And most importantly, the bottom line, and that is the profit potential, right? Something that we talked about is what is there on my slide right now in terms of direct exporting methods. The advantages and the disadvantages, which the class has discussed, you can have a look at this slide. I don't need to, I think most of them, economies of scale is what you had mentioned. Consistency in brand image is what the class had talked about. Ability to leverage is what the class had talked about. Uniformity of marketing practices is what the class had talked about. Disadvantages also we discussed in terms of the consumer needs, users pattern are going to be different. We also talked about the fact that the consumer response of the marketing mix are going to be different, differences in brand development processes, and the differences in the environment. Right? Something which the books talk about in terms of going global, understanding the similarities and differences in the branding landscape. How I brand my product in country X is going to be different from how I brand my product in company Y. I need to understand, are there established market players there? What is my marketing mix with respect to communication that I need to do, with respect to my product that I need to do, with respect to price that I need to do? Should I have the same price that I charge globally? Or should I have a price where I look at my cost of production, my markup, and then decide on the price? Right? So different strategies. If I look at a straight extension where I go with this with the same product, I don't change my product attributes and I don't change my product communication also. A Nike and Adidas, for example, I go with the same straight extension into global markets that I'm looking at. Can I do that? I can also look at product adaptation where I slightly tweak my product to meet the requirements of the consumer in that country. We talked about cars, for instance. A foreign brand in India can look at changing the aerodynamic designs to suit the Indian markets, to suit the Indian consumers' preferences. But the communication remains the same. The communication remains the same in terms of my branding communication. So in that case, I'm looking at a product adaptation. Another is where I'm looking at, I keep the same product, but I establish my communication message in such a way that the consumer is able to understand and relate in the country where I'm trying to operate. Right? My country of origin is where I manufacture. I go with the same product, but I ensure that my communication is such. I tweak my communication into the local language of the country where I operate on. So that can be a classic case of communication adaptation. And the other is where I change my product and I change my communication message also, which is a dual adaptation process. And the other is where I'm operating into global markets. Can I go in for complete product innovation? I look at complete product invention, where both in respect to communication, both with respect to product, the final product that I talk about into which I'm sending into that global market is completely a new product, right? So in terms of pricing, should I set up a uniform price everywhere, or should I look at a market-based price, or should I have a cost-based price in each country? So setting up a uniform price everywhere is where, for example, I'm charging $10. The equivalent of $10 is what I charge in India. If my brand is very, very strong, I can have a uniform price everywhere. If my product is, or my brand is into a niche segment, I can definitely charge the same pricing, but not always in most cases. Can I set up a market-based price in each country? What I charge maybe in the Southeast Asian countries would be different from what I charge in the European markets, would be different from what I charge maybe in a South American market, because it depends on the market's ability to purchase my product. And the third is where I set up a cost-based price approach. That means I will try to understand what is my cost of manufacturing. If my cost of manufacturing is low, I add a standard markup pricing on that, and then I charge it to the customer, wherein I look at competitive prices in terms of other players in that particular market, right? I may be charging high in other countries, but I will obviously adapt to that country's pricing strategy. If I feel the pull for my products is going to be high, the demand for my product is going to be high, and I understand the cost of production is very low in that particular country as compared to where I'm manufacturing, right? Of course, gray markets is another market which global manufacturers also need to look at and understand, right? So let me put this up in terms of, can there's no slide share here. Can I have a, let me stop sharing. And so guys, we will have the quiz coming up for you. It's 12:20 by my watch, right? Now, okay, no worries. So once I tell you the question, I'll start looking at the timer then. So the question for you guys is, I'll just give you one question, and I said it is open book, open note, so you can. But then the question for your first quiz is,